Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. So when rock historians talk about the end of the 60s or the end of the hippie dream, they always seem to point towards the Altamont concert that the Stones played at and the Flying Burritos and the Jefferson Airplane. There may be some truth to that, but not entirely. The movement continued into the early 70s with new styles coming in. So I thought, let's talk about albums from 1970 that rejected the hippie ideal. These are albums that completely were doing a 180 and just going forward and completely doing something different. So I'm going to start off here with pretty much a spokesman for the 60s era and a leader of the movement somewhat. Let's talk about John Lennon, that first Plastic Ono Band album. Pretty much here, John exercises every demon from his soul on God. He talks about he doesn't believe in anything from the Beatles to Zimmerman to Buddha. And then he proclaims the dream is over. And coming from a Beatle, I mean, being old enough at the time to hear this album, I was only like 5 when this album came out. So none of this would have been relevant to me at the time. But, having been, an older person at the time, like late teenager, early 20s, and hearing that must have been quite a thing to hear coming from a Beatle. The dream is over. I don't believe in Beatles. But not only is Lennon rejecting the entire 60s dream, he's rejecting false idols. He is using therapy, primal scream therapy, to get all his inner demons out. Songs like I Found Out, Mother, Working Class Hero, and then, of course, ending with God, and then My Mummy's Dead. It's just a really, really powerful album. I know I've showed this album a lot recently, but I'm just trying to highlight a particular theme here today in the channel. So Plastic Ono Band from 1970, right? How about something completely different, maybe about 7 years ahead of its time? The Stooges' second album, Funhouse. This is angry, this is raw, this is animalistic, and it is a 5-star, absolute cathartic listen. First side is just incredible. Down on the Street, Loose, TVI, Dirt. Just 4 songs of just absolute raw energy. And I believe Iggy, this is at least what I read, Iggy didn't even have a proper microphone. He just held like an SM57 or 58 around the studio and was singing like he was on stage during these vocal performances. Side 2 is just a full-on, just almost borderline freeform side. 1970 with Stephen McKay on saxophone. I think one of their greatest, just balls to the wall tracks. And then, of course, you've got Funhouse, the title track, which has this kind of just chaotic kind of James Brown funk beat going on. And then, of course, the chaotic closer, LA Blues. Yeah, this is completely different than anything a lot of late 60s bands were putting out. And this is like heading towards the future. It would take about 7 years to really feel the effect of this. 1977 with the breakout, the punk movement. Very influential album here. The Stooges, Funhouse from 1970. Here's a band that the Rolling Stone hated, absolutely just destroyed in their magazine with horrible 1-star reviews. In fact, I have the first Rolling Stone record guide, and I think this album probably got rated the highest at 2 stars. The rest of the entire catalog was 1-star albums. And now, if you look at a current Rolling Stone encyclopedia, this album is now rated as 5-star because it's highly influential in heavy metal, and that is Black Sabbath's Paranoid from 1970. This is dark. It is almost nihilistic. It is, it references just hard drugs, on Hand of Doom, heroin, just pretty much saying it out loud, just, what's going on with the character. It is just an electric funeral, talking about nuclear war. We've got War Pigs. I think War Pigs is one of the best anti-war songs of all time. I mean, it's still powerful after all these years, right? The way it comes in with that distortion and that loose rhythm section of Bill Ward and Geezer Butler just kind of slugging along this kind of sludgy kind of feeling, and then when it just kicks in with that ba-dan, just I think one of their greatest songs. Iron Man, Paranoid, Rat Salad, a little instrumental. Fairies Wear Boots has that really cool swing to it. So yeah, highly influential now. And I have to admit, when I was young, I didn't grow up with Black Sabbath. I didn't like Black Sabbath. A lot of my friends did. But over the years, they just grew on me. I think deep down, I kind of liked them. I just couldn't admit it. But I really dig early Sabbath now. So Black Sabbath, Paranoid from 1970. The first studio album by this band, the first was a live album from 68, Kick Out the Jams. MC5's Back in the USA is a total just back to basics rock and roll album. Completely different from, complete opposite of like say Sgt. Pepper or, you know, Days of Future Past from just a few years past. I think I like the live album better. This, I don't know, there's something about the production on here. I like the whole back to basics approach on here, like Tutti Frutti and Teenage Lust and Back in the USA, but I think the live album, Kicking Out the Jams, really packs a punch from 2 years earlier. But I thought I'd throw this in from 1970 because it's really, you know, it has nothing to do with the hippie ideal. It's just a back to basics approach. MC5, Back in the USA from 1970, their first studio album, 11 tracks. Here's a guy that pretty much parodied the entire culture, the entire 60s counterculture with We're Only in It for the Money. I thought I'd throw this into the bunch today. This is a posthumous Mothers of Invention album that came out. This one, along with Weasel's Rip My Flesh from 1970s, after the original Mothers lineup broke up in 69. This album, Burnt Weenie Sandwich. How about a little Stravinsky with your doo-wop? Really interesting Zappa album here, or Mothers album, should I say. A lot of styles on here. A little doo-wop, a little Stravinsky, some avant-garde, some jazz, some fusion, just all over the map. I'm still trying to get into this album. I like parts of it, but of the early 70s stuff, this one I'm still trying to get a hold of. But I like the fact that Zappa just put out what he wanted to play, what he wanted to do. There was nothing commercial about a lot of his material. In fact, most of it was not commercial. A true artist, just completely doing his own thing. So I'm throwing this in the mix of 1970. Burnt Weenie Sandwich from 1970 from the Mothers of Invention. Another figurehead of the movement is Bob Dylan, and where Lennon was pretty much exercising his demons with primal scream therapy. We've got Bob Dylan pretty much sabotaging his career for a brief moment with Self-Portrait from 1970. A lot of people consider this his worst album. I think he's put out way worse albums than this, especially in the 80s. It's not great. I mean, coming after like a five album run of just perfect albums, this must have been a shock to people at the time. I mean, of course, I bought this way after the fact. I listened to it one night, all in its entirety. Definitely some bizarre stuff on here, especially that first song, all the tired horses, just really strange. You could tell from the very first track, he's pretty much saying, fuck you, you know, I don't care what you think. And then just the selection of just all the different, it's just a hodgepodge of just, I mean, there's some really cool stuff on here. I like the Mighty Quinn the Eskimo, that version he does with the band. That had to be from the Basement tapes. It sounds like from those sessions. Love that version. His version of The Boxer by Paul Simon is really weak. That live version of Like a Rolling Stone is pretty poor. There are moments here and there that are kind of cool. Alberta #1. I gotta listen to this again. When I listened to it, I didn't think this was the worst album I ever heard in my life. I just thought, you know, it's not one of the greatest Dylan albums, but listening to some of those Dylan albums from the 80s, I'd say this looks pretty good compared to those. So we're going to throw this into the mix here, as it's just complete, like, he doesn't want anything to do with being a spokesman for a generation. This is Bob Dylan pretty much sabotaging himself for a brief moment in his career with the Self-Portrait album from 1970. A guy that would become a central figure in 1970s music throughout the decade. This is kind of the start of where it all starts for him. This is pre-Ziggy. We're throwing this into the mix today, The Man Who Sold the World. At times it sounds kind of like Cream, but on the other side it kind of hints at what's to come. Tracks like the title track, Man Who Sold the World, is fantastic. All the Madmen. Very kind of a dark album for Bowie. A lot of insanity, and talks about religion and technology and war and everything the hippie ideal dream did not talk about for the most part, especially insanity. But yeah, pretty good album here. I like about 3/4 of this, and I think this is kind of the start of Bowie's golden period from the 70s, and you got Hunky Dory and Ziggy and you know, all those amazing albums, Aladdin Sane. So this is kind of the start here. Bowie kind of putting himself on the map in the 1970s, pointing the way towards the future. And then I thought we'd wrap it up with this album here. This album was recorded at Madison Square Garden in late November, a whole week before the Ultimate concert was put on at the Speedway. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people claim this is the end of the 60s right here, the end of the ideal, hippie ideal. The album that came out right before this, Let It Bleed, is probably the Darkest Stones album. And pretty much, a lot of people think that is like the kind of like, you know, the final bell of the 60s. I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly things were changing quick from 70 onward. But I thought I'd throw this in here just as kind of an epitaph to what we're talking here about the 60s. The Rolling Stones, Get Your Ya-Ya's Out. Fantastic live album. I'm sure a lot of it was overdubbed. But I just love the raw Stones, especially from the late 60s, early 70s. And this just, some of these versions on here, like Love in Vain Live, Honky Tonk Woman, and Little Queenie and Stray Cat Blues are just so just fantastic raw rock and roll. So do you have any more to add to this list? Albums from 1970 that kind of rejected the hippie ideal? Let me know in the comment section. As always, thanks for watching. And if you dig the content across the channel, if you've seen a lot of videos and you dig the content, press subscribe. It's absolutely free. And we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.